Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I am your host, Ed Dentzel. I hope everybody's having a great week. It's been a beautiful week here in Madeira Beach, Florida. The weather has been nice. No rain, a little windy. Nice weather if you are a biker. Want to walk down on the beach. Perfect weather for that. For those of you who are never down here this time of year, you see all of these license plates from Canada. I can't tell you, as I go up and down Gulf Boulevard, which is the street that runs parallel to the shore. It runs north and south. It's as close as you can get to the beach without being on the beach. How many license plates I see from Canada, especially Ontario. And if you've been paying attention to the exchange rate between the United States and Canada, these people are getting so ripped off coming down here. For all of you who have been thinking about going to take a vacation in Canada, I know a little bit about that, being that I go there every year with my parents. We go fishing. Now is the time to go. With the strong dollar and Canada devaluing its currency, the exchange rate right now go up there. I think you give them $1 in American, you're going to get $1.45 in Canadian money. I was checking when I was in Canada last summer, late July of 2015. The exchange rate, I believe, was $1.25, maybe somewhere in the $1.20s. So if we gave them an American dollar, you get $1.25, let's say in Canadian back. Now it's like $1.45 in 6 months. So if you want to go, now's the time to go. If you ever wanted to go to check out Toronto, wanted to go check out some of the beautiful lakes, you wanted to go, if you're in the western side of the United States, on the West Coast, you want to go up to British Columbia, Vancouver, go now. Go now, because I don't know how long the United States is going to keep the dollar as strong as it is. I think at some point we're going to start devaluing our currency a little bit as well, and then all of these exchange rates will probably come back into line to what we were used to, with the last few years. I think we are one of the few major countries in the world that is sticking to a strong currency. Now, that's great for imports. It's not so great for exports, but it is also good for any Americans who are going outside of the country on vacation or business right now. Once again, though, I don't know how long that's going to last. You can email me at edwarddentzel@reagan.com. And then you can also follow me on Twitter, Dentzel Domain, all one word, no space in between. I have over 11,000 Twitter followers right now. As I've told you, I've been working hard at that, trying to branch out, trying to find new conservatives, trying to have conversations on Twitter, even though Twitter's stock price is plummeting. And I have my own reasons that I think that's happening, being that I've been on Twitter for a while and I understand how it's changed. And I don't think it's necessarily all political. There's, I think, a lot of conservatives out there who think that Twitter's gone into the tank because of what they've been doing against political speech, specifically conservative speech on there. I don't think it's that. You know that my account got suspended a couple weeks ago. I was talking about that. I think that was some nefarious type trying to get me in trouble. I do not think that it was caused by Twitter itself. I'm not going to be one of these conservatives that blames necessarily Twitter for that, although that was frustrating that whole weekend that happened. But I have over 11,000 followers now, and I'd love for you to join me on Twitter. I'll show you what I'm reading. I'll remind you that the show's on, and I'll put some funny stuff up there once in a while, too. So let's get right to the show. Haven't had a chance to hit upon one of my pet topics as a conservative. And if you want to see how far we've gotten out of whack in the relationship between government and the private sector, the government and regular citizens, the government and the regular person on the street. All you have to do is watch any time a private individual is called up to testify in front of some committee. I've been talking about this for 15 years, at least. Well before, of course, I was on Red State Talk Radio, well before I started doing my own podcasts. And like I said, going back to the earliest days that I was living in Las Vegas. And what caught my eye originally was when the tobacco companies got called up, the CEOs got called up there, and they were just lambasted by the representatives and senators and tobacco companies and the lawyers and the defense, they suing them, and all of this money that the government and all these lawyers, defense lawyers, got from this prosecution, and the people who, the plaintiffs in the cases, hardly got anything. If you ever wanted to hear Ed Dentzel at his best, where I started forming my opinions on what I'm talking about today, that was it. I don't think that our founding fathers ever had any idea that it would get this far. I would think that if they came back to life, which is in fact a spectacular basis for a great novel, I suppose. Has anybody ever done that? I'll have to look into that. They would be shocked at how politicians treat regular people up on Capitol Hill. We could talk about that regarding, remember the CEOs for the car companies that went up there, their cars not getting good enough gas mileage, just about industry, the banking industry, all these private people. And I know that, part of it is the reason that government gets away with it is because your average citizen doesn't understand what it all means. And I'm not saying they're stupid. I just don't think that they think into it very deeply. All they know is some rich CEO is up there, and you know what? Conservatives can think that as easily as liberals can. But your average person sees some rich guy, rich woman up there getting made fun of, getting criticized, and your average American citizen loves it. Me, I hate it. I've told several people over the last 15 years, if it was me and I was up there and I was forced to sit there and listen to these guys and women, men and women on both sides of the aisle who have been responsible for the blowing out of the debt, pandering to people, taking money from all these different private industries and then turning around and attacking American business. If I knew that and I was called up to Capitol Hill, there's no way that I would sit there and take any of this crap from any of these people. Remember, people, if you want to start somewhere, if you're just new to politics, not sure where you stand, whether you're a 20-year-old or you're a 40-year-old, I don't care what your age is, I don't care whether you're a citizen or not, I don't care what your gender, sexual identity, I don't care about any of it. I don't care about any of it. You want to learn about politics, just watch one of these instances and remember something. Those people making fun of that private citizen, they are the servants. The person they're making fun of is the boss. Remember, the people in Congress, the President of the United States, work for us, not the opposite. We are not indebted to them. We do not necessarily have to listen to them. This is what drives me, by the way, so nuts about hero worship. And I've been reading a couple articles about that in the last few days regarding what went on in Iowa, what's going to go on in New Hampshire, and how these fervent supporters of each of these candidates Why do people get so caught up, so crazy about the people who serve them? That's why I've always made the statement that why should I have a bumper sticker on my car of a politician? Why? Shouldn't he or she have a bumper sticker on his or her car of my name? I mean, they work for me. I don't work for them. Right? Are there any CEOs who ride around in their Mercedes with bumper stickers of their employees' names on the back? No. So why people do that, why people put bumper stickers on their cars of any politician on the right or the left is just weird to me. Now, why am I talking about this today? Why am I talking about this? I watched this Martin Shkreli. Is that his last name? Shkreli. He's the CEO of Turing, Turing, Turing Pharmaceutical Company. He got the patent for, all these crazy. Shkreli, Turing, and now the name Daraprin, which is a drug that's used. It's an anti-malarial drug. He got the patent for it for his company, and the price of it went from $13.50 a pill to $750. Does that story ring a bell now? Does it? Well, he was up on Capitol Hill today, and he pled the fifth to 99% of the questions. In fact, I think the only question he answered was how to pronounce his last name. And even that, whoever asked him that question, it was kind of a trick question. Now, you should know, if you didn't watch it, I did watch it. I watched every minute of it. There was Jason Chaffetz, was one of the politicians who was questioning Mr. Shkreli. Trey Gowdy, a guy who we as conservatives were supposed to like, was questioning Martin Shkreli. There was another Republican, I forget his name, was also questioning him. And then on the left, Elijah Cummings was questioning Mr. Shkreli as well. And in each case, each of them belittled him. Now, I'm not here to defend what Martin Shkreli did. I don't know the particulars. I read them. I don't know if I actually understand them. He seems to be a little bit of a shyster. He seems to be a little crooked, frankly. But that does not mean he gets to be belittled by politicians. And I was watching it on the Fox Business Network online, which I think is somewhat suspect. I know I'm not supposed to be able to do that, but I can. And the kid was rolling. I call him a kid because he's 32 years old, this Martin Shkreli, and I'm 45. So while they're asking him this, he's rolling his eyes. You can tell that he is just throwing it right back in their face without saying anything. And the commentators on Fox Business didn't like him doing that. Me, I find it hilarious because it's about time. And I don't care if it's Trey Gowdy. I don't care if it's on the right or the left. I don't care. This is the exact kind of attitude these people should have when they go up and testify in front of Congress. If it was me and they thought I did something wrong, I'd just say, you know what? If you think that I did something wrong, and maybe I did, maybe I didn't, just indict me, prosecute me, whatever you're going to do. I'm not going up there to talk to you. I'm not going. And if I did, I'd probably act the same exact way. And the funny thing is, really, really funny, is that here this kid took the fifth on all these questions. And they just tried to belittle him and guilt him about what he did with the price of this drug. And once again, I'm not trying to defend that, support it. It's none of their business. Frankly, it's none of their business. And not one of those Republicans up there, no matter how conservative they are, had the courage to say that. Not one of them had the courage to say, you know what, Seems like what he did might be a little suspicious, but I don't know why he's up here. I don't know why. If he did something wrong, wherever that he's going to be prosecuted, you should know that it's not all about this pricing of this drug. There are allegations that Shkreli was running a Ponzi scheme, that he was defrauding investors, and there's some other stories out there. The guy is not totally on the up and up, but that shouldn't matter. That should not matter. That does not mean that politicians then get to belittle somebody. Doesn't. No matter no matter how much joy the average citizen may get out of it. That is not the way it's supposed to be in this country. That's the way it is in other countries. If you want to take it to its maximum extreme, that's what goes on in North Korea. Government leaders get to belittle the citizens. That's what goes on there. We're not supposed to do that here. No matter how bad the man or woman might be. No matter how bad the company might be. No matter how bad the organization might be. If you have a case, take it to a jury, and let's see what happens. But this was such a show today. The funny part about it is after he took the fifth off, the kid left, went right to Twitter and called all those guys all those politicians in that committee imbeciles. Now that is good humor. And the kid, no matter what he did, what he did was wrong or not, he's right. It's a show. These guys know that the cameras are on them. These politicians know that, and they think that they have to perform for them. We're so caught up. We as conservatives, and I just wonder how many of you, if you watched it, or you can go watch a taping of it, I'm sure it's going to be on YouTube or whatever. If you watch that, what do you think? Does it seem right? When you watch that, do you think that you are living in a representative republic, or do you think that you are living in something else? If an alien came down, didn't know about the United States, watched that video, what would that alien think? He'd think, or it would think, that Martin Shkreli is the servant and those politicians are the masters. That's exactly what an alien would think. When in our form of government, it's the opposite. But none of these business people, they're so worried about getting criticized and how it's going to be in the realm of public opinion. Going back to the CEOs of the car companies, and remember all the politicians who made fun of them? They went to Washington, D.C. flying in private planes. Remember that? All the different company CEOs that got called up over the years, and all of them were made fun of, not doing their job. Well, here's what I know. Ford Motor Company doesn't run a deficit every year like the federal government does. That's what I know. The cigarette companies, no matter what you may think about them, and even though that industry has been hammered over the years, it doesn't lose money like the federal government does, but the federal government, the people who are running it, think somehow it seems right then that the federal government gets to make fun of these industries. It makes no sense. Meanwhile, we know what the federal government has done about damaging lives. It seems to get away with it. I'm not here to defend Martin Shkreli on the merits of whatever he did or didn't do. It may be he's the biggest jerk in the world. Well, you know what? Being a jerk is not illegal. And it shouldn't set you up for being up there and being made fun of by elected officials. It's just wrong. And that none of these... Now, Elijah Cummings, you expect that from him. But some of these people who are Republicans, Trey Gowdy, these good conservatives that partake in this as well, disgusts me. I just could not, I just would not take part. I'd just sit there, keep my mouth shut. If I was on that committee, first of all, I'd be even wondering why I'm there. What's this guy doing here? What's this guy doing? What's this this little kid here doing here? And if it was my chance to speak, I'd probably just say, Mr. Shkreli, I really have no questions for you. I understand that you have a case coming up against you. There's some charges against you. And I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm going to allow a jury somewhere down the road to determine your innocence or guilt or in any of this. And I'm just going to leave it at that. That's all I would say. That these guys who were on this committee didn't have the self-control to just keep it at that tells me something. And it's what is wrong with government. No matter, these people, I know what they're saying. I know what these committee members would say. We're doing the people's work here. This is how outraged people are about Martin Shkreli. Here's what I know. About 1% of the American population knows who Martin Shkreli is. 1%. And even if I said the name to somebody, they might recognize it, but they might not be able to put the name with what he did. It might seem familiar to a person just in passing. Are people really, really, truly outraged about this? Outraged? I guess the accent was wrong on that word. Are they truly outraged about this? I guess a few select ones are. I guess the ones who needed that drug and the price of the drug went up. And it should be known, you should know that the price of the drug has come back down. But that's a select few, and is it worthy of a committee meeting? See, that's what I've tried to tell you over the years, and I know I've gotten some blowback from fellow conservatives on this, about the idea of lobbying, the lobbyists, the special interests. And see, I look at that in a totally different way than I think your average person does, and even conservatives do. See, I think most people look at it and say, see these greedy politicians? Look at them taking money from all these. They're taking favors and getting paid off here and paid off there. And those businessmen, they could do this, and they're getting favors here and there. The lobbyists, the special interests, paying people off, big money going here, big money going there. And I've always tried to tell you that it's kind of the opposite. The reason that these businesses give to politicians and try to sway them is because it's protection money, because of all of the power that the federal government has. These business people would not send money to Washington in the form of payments with they wouldn't put money into lobbyists and all these nonprofit organizations that petition government if the government didn't have its hand in every sector of our country. And these business people know what the federal government could do if it wanted. And it's protection money. It's no different than the person who has a little store. Maybe not. Does protection money still happen in the United States? I guess somewhere it does. But maybe we'd have to go back 100 years. It'd be more of a relevant conversation with the mob, the mafia, and little store owners paying the mafia off as protection money. So the mafia doesn't come in and burn the store down and to protect against robbers. That's what's going on at the federal government level now, except that now it's corporations and politicians. Businesses are afraid if they don't give money to government, the government will come after them. To which I'd ask, you know what? Doesn't seem like that money's working too well, because it seems in a lot of cases the government still comes after business. like it did. How much money do you think that the cigarette companies gave to the federal government through the form of either taxes or lobbying over the years before they got called up before Congress? The car companies, all of these different sectors of the economy. All in an effort to keep the federal government off their back. That's all it is. That's all it is. And all of these politicians have taken part in it. And what you saw, if you watched it, with Martin Shkreli is just more of that. Federal government coming down on a private business owner. Once again, I'm not defending the merits of his case. But they think that it seems like the politicians feel like what they did with today was right. That they did it so easily. And it's wrong. There's no way that our founding fathers wanted federal officials, government officials, to make fun of private citizens. No matter if those politicians think that they're doing it for the rest of society or not. I'm sure that would have reminded them a little bit too much of the place their ancestors left, meaning England and King George II. Should never happen. But they get away with it because I guess Martin Shkreli is an easy target. And that's part of it too. And the cigarette companies were an easy target. And the car companies are an easy target because everybody thinks cars are too expensive. Well, it makes it easy for then politicians to get involved. Cigarettes, they're killing people despite all of the warnings on the cigarettes. People who smoke cigarettes know what they're getting into. Doesn't matter. Cigarette CEOs still get called up before Congress and get made fun of. It's sickening. But they get away with it because these companies, these people are easy targets. And in that way, the federal government is a bully. Remember, bullying is wrong no matter if the bully is doing it for the betterment of everybody else or not. A bully is still wrong even if he has the support of the rest of the class against one person. Remember that. There's 100 people in a class, and 99 of them hate one person. Doesn't mean one of those 99 gets to push that one around. No matter how righteous they may think they are. Bullying is still wrong. Pushing people around is still wrong. Intimidating people is still wrong. And that's all you saw today up on Capitol Hill with Trey Gowdy, Jason Chauvette, guys who should know better, and Elijah Cummings, who probably doesn't know any better. So that kid was up there rolling his eyes, then went on to Twitter afterwards. I fully support all of it. Not protecting him. If the jury finds him guilty of whatever he did, then he should go to jail to the fullest extent of the law. But we should leave it to juries and judges and lawyers and defense attorneys. Keep Congress out of it. I got to go to the break. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State.
Real radio for real Americans. Red State Talk Radio.
This is Brigitte Gabrielle from actforamerica.org. Ladies and gentlemen, if you do not go to bed every night absolutely fatigued from trying to restore America from the destruction that is taking place, then you're simply not working hard enough. Arm yourself with knowledge so that you too can act for America by listening to Red State Talk Radio. Red State Talk Radio, the dominant force in conservative internet talk radio. RedStateTalkRadio.com. Lock it in and rip off the knob.
I can't defend my family because I live in Chicago.
I am free to defend my family with my AR-15 or handgun because I live in Wyoming.
I can't even protect myself if I'm attacked because I live in D.C.
I carry my 9mm in my purse anywhere I go in Texas.
I can't protect my small retail shop here in Brooklyn.
We keep guns behind the counter at our shop in Oklahoma. Only had to show it once.
Do you see a pattern?
Demand equal gun rights in America. Go to saf.org now.
My name is Courtney Luster. I'm 21, well-educated, and unemployed American. I happen to be black, so I'm in the highest unemployment segment of the population, black youth unemployment. Notice I don't refer to myself as African American because I'm an American first. I'm a proud American who happens to have black skin. So please explain to me where African American fits into that equation. You're right, it doesn't. For over 60 years, the Democrat Party has used my fellow black Americans to maintain power in the federal and state governments. Why do I say that? Because I read history. While many of my friends are watching mindless videos, I choose to listen to Red State Talk Radio. Why? Because I want to educate myself, not entertain myself. Red State Talk Radio, America's premier conservative talk radio network. Hey, all you black American youth, be a Frederick Douglass Republican, not an Al Sharpton race pimp. Educate yourself. Listen to RedStateTalkRadio.com.
This is Michael Cutler, retired senior special agent with the former INS, the Immigration and Naturalization Service. You should know that I'm also a lifelong Democrat, but ladies and gentlemen, the mainstream media has completely failed the American people. That's why, despite being a lifelong Democrat, I listen to Red State Talk Radio, the dominant force in conservative internet talk radio. Lock it in and rip off the knob.
We're back at the Dentzel domain on Red State Talk Radio. I really believe this Martin Shkreli, did I call him Jason Shkreli before? Martin Shkreli. It's a teachable moment. This is one of those instances where if somebody watches it, you can really get them to learn something just within 5 minutes. We as I've told you, I try to use this show to teach new people about conservatism. And I would love, if somebody's new to politics, to sit them down and watch the clip of Martin Shkreli, testifying before Congress. He didn't really testify, he took the fifth. And just ask that person, what do you think about that? And then from that, you could start a conversation about, these guys with the microphones on this one side, all those guys, those are our servants. They are our representatives. They work for us. This guy over here, sitting alone over here with the one microphone, he's a private citizen. All right? They, in a way, work for him. Now, granted, these representatives, they work for the rest of the United States as well. But do you think it should be the government's job to make fun of a private citizen, no matter if the rest of society wants that to happen? No matter what you think Martin Shkreli might have done, do you think that's right? As a conservative, I don't think it is. I don't think it is. And this wouldn't happen if the federal government were smaller. If there were less agencies, less rules, less regulation, this wouldn't be happening. The good news is, though, Martin Shkreli, with a smaller federal government, could still get in trouble for what he's doing. It's still what he probably did was questionable. Once again, somebody else will determine whether he's guilty or not. But you can have a smaller federal government and still prosecute Martin Shkreli if you think that's what he deserves. The problem you get into is probably some people think, well, if we shrink this federal government, guys like Martin Shkreli are going to get away with what they did. That's wrong. That's not true. That's not true. Because all today was a show. It was bring your popcorn, bring your soda. Look how we get revenge, not we, but some people get revenge on Martin Shkreli for him hiking the price up on a drug in the United States. And everybody knew, including Martin Shkreli, what this was going in. It's going to be a big show. The representatives knew that he was going to take the fifth. He knew he was going to take the fifth. His lawyer knew he was going to take the fifth. So why even bother? See, this is different, though, than something like Lois Lerner. She is a public servant. She wasn't working in private industry. She was working at the IRS. That's different. With Martin Shkreli, totally different situation. Private business, private money, private citizen, not taking a government paycheck, only responsible to himself, his investors, the shareholders, his employees, or whoever else. And he may be the worst boss and most crooked boss in the history of the United States. Still doesn't mean that he should get lambasted from a bunch of self-righteous representatives, no matter what party they're from. But it's a great teachable moment and what has gone wrong in our government. Let's move on to something else. Rick Santorum, gone. I was having a conversation last night, very quick conversation regarding Rick Santorum with a friend of mine. And he reminded me that he, my buddy, was a bigger fan of Mitt Romney in 2012, and I was the bigger fan of Rick Santorum in 2012. That is something that I totally forgot about. And I think it shows how much of a fan I wasn't of Mitt Romney. I did not vote for him in the primaries. I did vote for him in the general election. I did not vote for Rick Santorum, by the way, in the primaries either. I voted for Newt Gingrich, and I think I've said that before. But in 4 years that we've come so far, that Rick Santorum is not even on my radar, I think shows how far the Republican Party has come. And I'll continue to say it's too bad that Donald Trump got in the way of progress. But he dropped out, Rick Santorum, and he has now thrown his support behind Marco Rubio. I guess that shouldn't be a surprise. There was a suspicion that I had, and it was helped by the fact that Rick Santorum and Mike Huckabee showed up at Donald Trump's get-together this past week, and instead of, when Donald Trump didn't go to that debate, Rick Santorum, Mike Huckabee showed up at his event. I was thinking Rick Santorum is going to drop out and throw his support behind Donald Trump. Now, that would have been something, but he didn't. And I think what we're continuing to see here is how big of a jerk everybody else thinks Ted Cruz is. Because if you ask me, I don't know. It seems to me that Rick Santorum and Ted Cruz have more in common, but maybe I'm wrong about that. I guess I am. That's not how Rick Santorum views it. Rick Santorum, in general, should just get on with his life. He had his fun back in 2012. He can have it on his resume that he won the Iowa caucus in 2012. He ended up beating the eventual nominee, and that's something. That's a big deal. And Mike Huckabee, same way. He can say in 2008 he beat John McCain in Iowa. He can put that on his resume, and he can brag to his buddies about it, and his family can be very proud of him. But these guys need to go away. These guys need to go away. And in fact, I'm going to guess that one of the reasons Rick Santorum came out to support Marco Rubio is maybe Rick Santorum is hoping of getting a cabinet position. But we see this, it's a pattern that's developing. You have former senators or current senators who have now come out in support of Marco Rubio. And it's hard to find any politicians in office right now who support Ted Cruz. And that is actually working to Ted Cruz's favor. It's funny how this is flipped, hasn't it? It wasn't so long ago where even on the Republican side, we would have viewed a positive for a candidate who's getting support of his fellow Republicans, fellow senators, fellow representatives, maybe a former president, governors, former governors. That would have been a plus. These days, I think it's a negative. And I actually think that, for example, Tim Scott has now come out, South Carolina senator has come out in support of Marco Rubio. In fact, my dad was the one who mentioned that to me. He was the one that first heard about that. I don't know how much these endorsements help. If we are truly in an era of, quote-unquote, anti-establishment, then getting endorsements from other politicians cannot be seen as a positive, correct? Wouldn't that make sense? I think it does. So the longer Ted Cruz can go without getting any endorsements from his fellow senators, any governors, anybody else who drops out, throws their support behind him, as long as that doesn't happen, as long as he gets no support from any established politician, I think that's going to be good for him. In fact, I think it's safe to say that it could very well be, depending on how long Donald Trump is in, that Donald Trump might get more supporters from people in government than Ted Cruz does. Very interesting. Funny how things are just kind of flipped around. But, we as conservatives, I think this is something that we've wanted for a while, hasn't it? You can't tell me that in past years you were kind of dismayed when your favorite guy or favorite woman would get an endorsement from some fellow senator, maybe some representative that didn't thrill you so much. You know how that feels. We wanted our favorite candidate to be popular for by one group, and that was the American people, for the voters. And I think that's the kind of campaign that Ted Cruz is trying to run. Is it going to be successful? I don't know. And Marco Rubio, I've told you, I can vote for Marco Rubio. I don't believe, for example, I mentioned earlier that my dad was the one who told me about Tim Scott endorsing, because sometimes I just don't follow some of this stuff. I'm just moving on to other things. But my dad was listening to what Tim Scott had to say, and that Gang of Eight thing, it's behind him. And I simply asked my dad, well, why do you believe that? Because Tim Scott said it. Because a politician said it. Now, to me, I can vote for Marco Rubio because I've told you, I've been honest with you. Immigration is not one of my top topics, which led into a kind of a strange exchange with my dad in that immigration, I know, is much more important to him than it is to me. You know my opinion. Just follow the law. Now, my dad, he wants to believe what Tim Scott said. However, I don't know if it's believable, but my dad is more hopped up on immigration than I am, which means my dad should oppose Marco Rubio more than he does. And I should support Marco Rubio more than I do. It's kind of a paradox. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I'm not going to believe in Marco Rubio's case the circumstances regarding the Gang of Eight and his attitudes toward amnesty and illegal immigration, no matter what Tim Scott or any other senator or politician who comes out to support Marco Rubio, I'm not inclined to believe them. I'm not inclined to do that. But Rick Santorum out, I don't think we'll miss him. I think that this is certainly not as big a deal as when he dropped out in 2012, specifically because Rick Santorum was getting a lot more votes back then, and there are a lot less people involved in 2012. But let's talk a little bit more about Marco Rubio. And I want to combine a couple different stories I saw about this. First of all, I can understand if you conservatives out there are a little confused right now. And what I mean by that is, for so long, you had popular conservative media types coming out against Marco Rubio and saying that how bad it was that he went along with the Gang of Eight, has been for amnesty in one form or another, and he's been wishy-washy on that particular topic. In the debates, he has, in my opinion, lost the exchanges with Ted Cruz regarding immigration, and I believe he's lost the exchange with others regarding the topic of immigration as well. But you have conservative media types being so great, saying that Donald Trump is so great. We know who they are: Rush, Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham, Ann Coulter. Now, Ann Coulter is maybe a different story, but the rest of them. And then suddenly yesterday, and I saw it on Breitbart.com because, as I've told you, I don't listen to Rush anymore. Rush comes out and says all of these great things about Marco Rubio. As a conservative, are you confused? After saying that they're behind Donald Trump because what he wants to do about immigration and building the wall and getting Mexico to pay for it and sending all these illegals back to where they came from after weeks, if not months, of applauding Donald Trump for saying that, they now come out and say, this Marco Rubio guy, man, he's really, really conservative. I really believe that speech that he gave on Monday night was so conservative, it's the greatest thing in the world. Man, that gets confusing. I am glad I am not one of you. And you should be very glad that you listen to this show, because I don't do that to you. I don't try to put you in these logical pretzels that you yourselves are going to have to work your way out of them. I don't do that to you. I've been against Donald Trump from the beginning, no matter what he said about immigration or any other topic. And I've treated Marco Rubio pretty much with kid gloves, and that's what I'm going to do from now on. And that's what I've been doing regarding him. Why I can do that? Because my opinion on immigration is a little different than your average conservatives, not because I'm wishy-washy on it. It's just that I haven't made it the crazy topic that all of those others have. And see, that's what happens, as I've been telling you for months, when you start painting yourself into a corner with one particular topic. Like, for example, here's a good example of this. Ann Coulter. At least she's being consistent, because since Monday, she's been making fun of Marco Rubio. And she's still going crazy for Donald Trump. But is she going to continue to do this right through November if Marco Rubio gets the nomination? Is she? She has put so much money into one topic. Now, she may not care. It's her life. She can do what she wants. But I know a lot of you have been behind her regarding this. So what are you going to do if Marco Rubio becomes the nominee now? He may. It's possible. You going to sit home? You know I'm going to sit home. Donald Trump's the nominee. Are you going to do that in turn? But you know why I'm doing that, because I know he's not a conservative. Whereas Marco Rubio's somewhat conservative. He may just be a little wishy-washy on this particular topic. And are you going to sit home for a guy who has a 90-something% rating from conservativereview.com, that liberty rating that I haven't mentioned in a while? Are you going to do that? If you do, you're going to have to square yourself with your own conscience. And what's Ann Coulter going to do? And see, this is why I've told you for months, you cannot get caught up in one topic. You have to look at the overall message of what you think is going to happen. Because there's not any topic, even with me, with Ted Cruz, I'm sure he's going to do some things that I don't like. Way it goes. He's conservative enough for me. Marco Rubio, conservative enough for me. Donald Trump, not conservative at all. But you'll have to square that with yourself, being that I think a lot of you have gotten so caught up with the immigration angle. And on top of it, you now have other people that I knew you listened to have kind of screwed you over. Telling you for months Marco Rubio is wrong, Marco Rubio is bad, and now they're going to reverse themselves and say, yeah, well, that speech was just the best thing ever. I just want you to know I'm not going to do that to you. Now, there's another article by the lefty Mickey Cause who's saying that Marco Rubio is this year's John Edwards. I think that's going a little far. John Edwards was a flim-flam man. I don't think that Marco Rubio is a flim-flam man. If you ever read anything about, and I even forget what the books were now, about John Edwards and how he cheated on his wife, got that Riley Hunter chick pregnant, made his assistant claim that the assistant got Riley Hunter pregnant. I mean, what a wild, wild story. If there is anything close to that regarding Marco Rubio, I would be surprised. I know there's been some discussion about his finances. That's been a topic, how he spends money, and that's nothing compared to, I think, the guy that John Edwards is and was. But Mickey Cause, he's a liberal, but he's huge. He's a big anti-immigration guy. So that's why he's going after Marco Rubio that way. You have to keep this on perspective. Once again, once you start buying into one particular topic too much, this is what happens. And I've tried to tell you people to avoid that. Look at the overall picture. I don't like him over here, but I really like him over here and all these other topics. With Mitt Romney, I compromised myself in 2012. In John McCain in 2008, I compromised myself. I've told you I'm not doing that anymore. And you have to admit that Marco Rubio or Ted Cruz, I'm not talking about Donald Trump, but those two guys are way more overall conservative than John McCain and Mitt Romney are. So for you people out there who immigration is your number one issue, are you really going to say that you could show up and vote for Mitt Romney in 2012, but you can't vote for Marco Rubio in 2016? Is that what you're really going to tell me? You showed up for John McCain in 2008, but you can't show up for Marco Rubio in 2016. Is that what you're going to tell me? Then you're crazy. You are not conservative. You are a one-issue voter. And I don't think that's who you were just a few years ago. But you've been screwed over by people you've been listening to too much. People that are marketing a point of view for ratings only and not in line with conservative thinking. I know that's hard for you to maybe admit to yourself. But I think in the end, Marco Rubio, if he gets the nomination, will be fine by me. Ted Cruz, of course, is going to be fine by me, and we know they differ in some ways. But I think you got to throw to the side what some people are now saying about him after it just has become so confusing, and it's all because we've got caught up in one issue. But you've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I remind you can find my books on Amazon.com. You can go to edwarddentzel.com, where you can find all of my old Red State Talk Radio shows. You can go to edwarddentzel.com/book, where you can download the first chapter of my next novel, The Comebacks. You can find my shows at Podbean, SoundCloud, YouTube. You can email me at edwarddentzel@reagan.com. Twitter feed is Dentzel Domain. Facebook, LinkedIn, I'm everywhere. And I thank you for listening tonight. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.